today on this beautiful Saturday. And so today I have another topic regarding the importance of I. And so this is another session, social well-being session. My name is Judith Mendoza. I am a behavior consultant and educator. The information that I provide is part of the remote online learning that I provide online. And so, of course, providing quality education, mentoring, and guidance is the key. I am also volunteering my time in doing charity work, bringing autism awareness, education, and mentoring. Bringing education in regards to autism, what autism is, and for those who are adults with autism, then these sessions, the importance of I is to bring to the attention the importance of our existence, the disorder that may develop in those who have autism due to the challenges that they have, difficulties when it comes to communication. And so today the topic is relating to the augmentative and alternative communication known as AAC that those with autism develop and utilize. And basically and also, of course, this is for them to communicate. So I have been concentrating in, we have to know first, we ourselves know what our thoughts are in our mind and why we do certain things. So others can visualize, right? I can visualize what others do, but only I can know what I feel for myself, and only others can know what they feel for themselves. So I share the information that I have collected, the data that I have collected in this past 5 years since I started to concentrate in autism research first. And of course, then there comes the awareness, because there is a need. The type of awareness that I bring in regards to autism is not the same as what others are doing. I do bring education with it, right? And so education in regards to autism, because what I have found out in my research is that autism is something, especially in adults, it's something that has been misunderstood. Data has been collected in regards to what those with autism go through, and more information exists when it comes to children, because of course autism can be readily seen then. So my data research concentrates on individuals with autism, individuals in my past that have autism but that they were not aware of it, because there is no knowledge or vast knowledge in regards to it, or understanding. So for me, for my personal experience, you may know that I speak about Frank, which I wanted to clarify, right? Because when I started to speak in regards to this matter, I usually explain things plainly, just the way that I see them. And that is the way that we should do. We should explain things the way that we see them. So for me, when I mentioned that Frank, who has autism, seemed to be not having autism up to a certain age, which is what has been found out also. But most likely, when it comes to explaining why, those who study autism did not understand why there were changes that seemed that the person is regressing in understanding. And well, to me, when I encounter this in Frank, of course it was to me as a phenomenon, as I mentioned. Not that Frank is a phenomenon, because he is a human, but the fact that it seemed that he was functioning when he used to speak with us, and then years later, as of course there were different things happening in his life, and time had passed. Well, we didn't have that much communication in person, but when we did have that communication in person, it seemed as if he was fragmented. That's what I saw, and that's what I will explain it as. So the phenomenon was that this man, he's an intelligent man, right? Because he continues to be intelligent. It's just that now he comes to the understanding that he has autism, that he has had a dissociative identity disorder due to it, and that his mind has been in autopilot behind these identities, and now he has to develop his own identity. And of course, anything that we do in life that requires that we learn a new skill is going to learn an efforts, and we're going to find difficulties, and that is what he's finding out now. his communication has regressed a lot. It could seem that way. But in reality, when it came to understanding information, and this is the key thing, this is the key factor, that, well, he wasn't diagnosed as having autism. He did have all the signs. But we didn't know what autism was, so we didn't have anything to compare his condition and symptoms and behaviors with. We didn't have anything to compare it with because we didn't know. And so even though he was demonstrating, we were observing autism in him, we attribute it to other things. And then also, because of that, of course, and this is what makes everyone's experience different, is that he didn't know that he had autism. So if there were any type of help that he could have gotten at the moment for it, and even for life, he didn't. And of course, we don't know if that would have made a difference. It seems that it may not, because what I have seen is that the complaint is, my child is now 18 years old, and he's regressing. He was in high school, he was doing well, and now he's regressing because maybe now the adult, right? Because 18 will be an adult. The 18-year-old adult don't have these patterns that he used to have in school in order for him to carry on conversations. And so now he may find himself or herself, but it is more better seen in male men. It's more pronounced. Autism is more pronounced in those who are males, and that is because of the way that they are made, the way that they process information already naturally than how we women process information. We're made differently. Our bodies function differently to things, to matters. So we're males and females, not just from our reproductive organs point of view, but from the entire person. So the phenomenon was the change that had happened, and that it seemed that there was no reason. There was no reason why he was speaking before. He was functioning, he was functional, he was talking, he was understanding, he was communicating with everyone. He had many friends. I mean, Frank had many friends. And between the two of us, we had many friends also. And we could communicate with them. Of course, there were times, for example, I remember a time when we were together with our friends, and one of our friends was making a joke, and his name is Emmanuel, and he was making a joke, and I noticed that Frank tried to be involved in what was going on, and he said something, but it was like it didn't make sense what he said at the moment and what he had said, and Emmanuel was joking, and we were all laughing about what he was also doing, because he was joking, but he was also doing movements with his body that made the joke even more funnier than what he was saying. And so Frank tried to do this, and I did notice that, and I did notice a lot of things. I observed autism in Frank. I just did not know that it was autism. So I am saying this because Frank is now an adult, and he is now going through the process of learning how to control his thoughts. And so when it comes to the language that these who have autism learn to speak, because I have not seen differences when it comes to others who have autism and Frank. There are many similarities, of course. Different environment, different family members that they replicate, so the behaviors of these humans might be different, but not in many ways. And so having understanding, because it is very important, it is very important to have a very well understanding of what autism is. The person is born with autism. Autism later on gets to be better seen, better observed in the person, and as the person grows in age, grows older, right? So goes through the process of growth. Malnutrition will make the situation worse for anyone, but especially for those who have autism. And so I have spoken in regards to the brain condition before, and how our brains are part of our body. We tend to kind of refer to the physical health and then mental health as if we're separated from one from the other, but we're not. A human is the physical body, is mental health, as well as physical health. One has to do with the other. And our nutrition, right? That is another thing that we like to separate. Our nutrition has to do a lot with how we're going to function in our brain and how we are going to communicate. Now, what is, right? Because what I found out is that Frank processes information in a literal way, just as other humans who have autism. And how I find out this is because I had first of all, I had to condition my brain, my psychological state, to understand that Frank has autism. It took me about 2 years to believe that that's what it was. After I believed, because he will behave in ways where he seems to be okay. He seems to be functioning well, and he's talking to me and he's responding, because I used to talk to him. I will reason with him. He will answer me correctly, but yet when it came to certain things, after some time had passed, of course we were separated, but then later on we got to talk one another in person. But when I used to ask him to do certain things, like for example, when he was at the band, which is where I found him again. It's not that he had not been around where I was, but because he was wearing these guises, I didn't recognize him. And basically that's the way that he maneuvered himself, because he needed these patterns for him to move about, and he still does. But that is what he is now understanding first from himself. So I will ask him, right? I will, as I started to talk to him again as a friend, I will tell him, let's hang out. Let's go out to eat something, because he had been there in the band for some hours and I didn't see him eat. So I will say to him, just how any friend will tell another friend, let's hang out, let's do something, let's catch on, and see what's been going on with you, what's been going on with me, what you've been doing in your life. I haven't seen you, you haven't seen me. And basically I will ask him, and he will behave in a way as if it wasn't okay for him to do that. And he will also tell me that he will tell me, basically, when I realize he was telling me things that I had told him in the past. So I was seeing that. I was seeing the replication. And so for him, that was a way of using augmentative and alternative communication as a method. So he is showing me, and he is behaving as what I used to do, but not what I used to do before, but what I used to do after, when we started to have the problems. But he had not seen the difference. And so of course the behavior that I was portraying onto him was that I don't want to do anything with you, I don't want to have anything with you. And basically it was because of the way that he was behaving that I didn't understand, that his behavior started to get worse and worse and worse. And it started to get worse and worse and worse because First of all, I learned that he is able to, at the moment, but of course he has made a lot of changes, a lot of modifications that he has made, that Frank has made. So what I noticed is that he was replicating people exactly as how he see them. Everything from the person. At one moment, I did believe that he was doing this because we have neurons in our body, mirror neurons in our brains that capture the information that we visualize, and we can replicate it. That is why we can replicate things. That's why people can teach us how to do things and we can replicate it. Obviously, it makes sense, right? And what I have noticed also is that, for example, groups in family members, they replicate one another. They may not notice that. But family members, because they are close together and a lot of time they spend together, they usually mimic each other's gesturing. Maybe even the way that they move their body, words that they say, right? This happens. And when we start having friendships, we also do that. We start mimicking our friends, and depending how strong we have an attachment with that person, maybe that we respect that person, we have an admiration for that person, we start imitating that person even more. And so in the family group, it's the same thing. So you'll see family members imitating their gestures, body posture, and even the things that they say. So I knew that this was something that it is common, it is found in family members. So I believed, okay, so this is natural. But then it wasn't a surprise for me that Frank was sometimes he will seem to be looking like he is behaving as his mother, or behaving as his father, or behaving as his siblings, his brothers, right? Then when Frank started to have a relationship with Kim, I also started to notice that he was taking behaviors, gestures, words, ways of doing things as she was doing. And the same thing happens with us humans. We have the tendency that depending on how much we spend time with the person, we start developing the same skills, depending on who has stronger. It will depend on who's more social, who has more social strength. It will depend on that, because that's what I have noticed. And also it will depend on how much you feel close to the person. Even it could be a friend, right? Because we can love in different ways. We love our friends in a different way that we love our family. And we love our family in different ways because mom, dad, we love them differently than we love our siblings. So we demonstrate different types of love. And we demonstrate a different type of love when it comes to someone that we are involved with romantically. It's not the same. Then also there is attraction. And so I also noticed that Frank was doing, and so I also said, well, this is also something natural that can happen between two people who are spending time together, and they have been spending years together, Kim and Frank. So I was like, it's natural that it happens. So, but later on, as Frank was losing family members, because of course the natural thing is that as brothers or sisters get older, they get to be independent, they like to do things for themselves, and so they also start forming their own families. Everybody starts or continues to grow, they become adults. So it's a natural process of life. Also, it could be that it is not a natural process of life, but it could be that between parents, they have difficulties. And so they separate or they get divorced, which is what happened also in Frank's situation. And so, because in this also, in studies, it has been noted that in adulthood, for those who have not been diagnosed as having autism, in adulthood, it becomes very evident that they have autism, because, of course, these links that they had of identity patterns that they are working together with, or that they assimilate themselves to. They call this masking, or used to call it masking, for those who have autism. It becomes difficult as you have changes in the family that does not allow for them to duplicate themselves in the image of others. Now, those who have autism also have ways of communicating when it comes to the augmentative alternative communication, which just like how we use sign language, or now they use devices to communicate. Those who have autism, even though they have not been identified as having autism or diagnosed as having autism, they find a way to communicate. But and of course, because they can communicate, then they have difficulty understanding the information, because they can only understand the information in a literal form, meaning it is what it is, no figurative form. And that is something that I found in regards to Frank. And that is where the mismatch also, the mismatch, or pointing out to one thing to show another thing, is what they do as augmentative and alternative communication. For example, something that Frank has been able to understand, to discern, to understand, and to know that he cannot replicate everything that happens in his environment and mind, which he was doing. See, he was replicating everything, literally everything, as it had literally happened. So including problems and conflicts. He will replicate the whole thing. Imagine just as if he had been filmed in camera, which maybe he did, and he will replicate exactly as how it happened, without taking away any problems, any conflicts, any arguments, any violent attitudes from people. Everything he will replicate exactly how it was, and it was like he was filming with a camera, and then he replicated everything that he saw exactly how he saw it. Of course, then the changes that we see, that we observe in those having autism, we see changes in them, and these changes have to do that there are identity patterns, and then these identity patterns are not there anymore, or the identity patterns are not doing what they were doing before, and so they follow the identity pattern, not what they are supposed to be doing with their own body, as if they had a choice, which they do, but they are not understanding that. So I wanted to explain this, because as I go explaining how to communicate, right, how to do the change, you have to understand first that those who have autism are finding a way to communicate. They are making comparisons of things when it comes to words, because when they read information also, it might be that they just concentrate in words, and they concentrate in words that it has to do with what they want to do. And so even if Frank does this, he concentrates on words sometimes, and depending on what I'm telling him, it's like he only concentrated on that word, not on the rest of the things. So I have to tell him, I have to remind him, go back, read all the information that I have provided you, and understand what the information is about. Discern what the information is about. He has been able to do this because, of course, he has been taking care of himself, of his nutrition, which is part of our adult life, is part of being adults, is part of our responsibility. So we have to understand that. So then we have that this communication is being used. Repetitive actions are communication. And just as how emphasis is part of communication, and emphasis means that something, we want to say something we believe is important, we emphasize it, we repeat it over and over. It is not any different with those who have autism. They are not just repeating things because they are just repeating things. They are understanding information. But because our language, in any language, because in Spanish it's the same thing. we have figurative language, we have all this type of language factors that that we use, including body language, including our facial gestures, our hands gestures. And so those who have autism are only able to understand information in a literal way. So you're saying a lot of words, but in reality, the way that those who have autism are understanding information is in the way that language is formatted for those who use American Sign Language, or ASL. If you know the formation, how sign language is formatted, you will know that with few words, with only a few words, you can transmit a thought. You can say what you want. You only need a few words. So that is how those who have autism are understanding information. The variety of words that we may use make the understanding of information more difficult to them. Using figurative language make it more difficult for them. So what I have done, right? What I have done is that I have explained the matter of identity to Frank, so he have to understand the concept of what it is, because those who have autism are not developing their own identity. They are not understanding the concept of I, of me, of being the person. If you know, when a child who has autism is using language, that child will repeat exactly the same that is being asked. Meaning, also, they are having difficulty distinguishing the tone. There's different tones that we use when we ask questions and when we make statements. When it's spoken, because when it is written, of course, you can see it. You can see that there are symbols that are being used. So basically, when a child is asked, "Are you hungry?" If the child is hungry, he will say, "Are you hungry?" As adults, that way of expressing themselves does change, but what it is that the person now has learned how to speak from your point of view, but not from their point of view, not from self. So there is the importance of I when it comes to developing an identity for self. Then um, when it comes to dissociative identity disorders, understanding what dissociative identity disorder is important, is essential. Because those who have autism are dissociating from themselves. Because of the way that they are understanding language, because they process language in a literal way and information in a literal way. So what they are seeing is what they are going to replicate as they see it. So there is a difference in between of how their neurons are replicating information. Because, for example, as I said, we all learn by replicating others. But the difference is that, for example, I have been taught many skills by others, and I have learned by observing. And so that's how we learn. We learn by observing. But having the consciousness, and this is what does not happen for those who have autism. For those who have autism, basically, their mind unconsciously is learning what they're learning. And so just as those who have trauma due to post-traumatic stress for whatever reason, because remember also those who have autism, we only speak about the autism that they have as the difficulties in causing stressful circumstances for them, but then there are other things in their lives that cause them, or that may cause them other certain types of stressful circumstances, that the only way to escape is to dissociate oneself from self, and then behave as others. For example, in Frank's situation, right? I know him, I know his life, I know his parents, I know his environment, I know what he has been through. And so I can tell that besides having autism, he was going through other things. For example, being punished by his mother because he was behaving as his mother, not as a child. He was behaving exactly as mom, thinking in his head, I am mom, so mom can do this, then I also have the right to do this because I am mom. That's what he's thinking in his head. That is the way that he dealt with the situation that existed in his home, by dissociating himself from self, because he has the difficulty, first of all, already with communication. And then his parents do not know that he has autism. Well, no one knew. And I didn't understand the reason why he will smiled and smile. He smiled like when his mother used to punish him. And I will see him go by and his mother had just beat him, and he will smile passing by. And I thought that the reason why he was doing that was because he was embarrassed and he did not want to show that his mother had just beaten him. And so that's what I thought. It was one time that happened. It did not. I didn't see that ever again. So, but the reason why he will do that is because in his mind he is mom. But then whenever a situation happened, then in order for him to process the situations, he will jump from one identity to another identity and another identity in order for him to deal with different situations. For example, in school, he will behave as in high school, which is when I met the family, that he was in high school. Then he will behave in different ways, and the teachers will say that he also, because his mother and I used to go to the school, his mother was very protective of him, so that was good. So the teachers will say that when he will be called his attention, that he will do the same thing. He will smile, and this is something that his mother will do. So when he will do these things, I will say, well, again, he is being like mom because this is the way that mom, so it's a skill, right? You learn how to behave, what is the best way to behave. And okay, so we behave in ways, like for example, I have noticed that behaving in the way that we don't react violently, or we don't scream, we don't yell when we speak. All of these things show of me that I have composure. But for him, it wasn't that, because he wasn't applying anything to himself. He was applying it to or he was just taking whatever identity that he needed for whatever was going on. And so we do have in our brain mirror neurons that help us learn. We do replicate things, but we apply them, we apply the skills, we apply what we're learning to self, so that it becomes what I know, what I have learned, what I can do with my hands, what I know how to do. And I understand the information fully so that I can explain it to others. Also from my point of view, not from whoever taught me the information anymore. It becomes my information. I have processed it. I have most likely even added my point of view, my opinion. And so it becomes now what I know. Because as I keep saying, if not, I will be quoting a lot of people. So I have to be able to make the information for myself in order for me to speak it to others. So this is something that I wanted to explain today, so that we have an understanding of what is this augmentative and alternative language, which it is okay to use, but when we use it appropriately with the appropriate either devices, right? Because people are to be used as if we can control others. And this is something that the augmentative and alternative communication that those who have autism learn how to use. And what happens is that if I'm under the impression that I am this other human and this human is not doing what I want this person to do, it is when the controlling and manipulative actions come from those who have autism, because they only can control themselves by observing this identity that they are copying and replicating and duplicating. But if this identity is not doing what they want, and we cannot force people to do anything, we shouldn't be controlling or manipulating anyone. All of us have the right to ourselves and to make decisions for ourselves, not for others, not in behalf of others. And so if you have autism, and if your parents did as Frank's mom did, which she used to communicate for her children in order to have, of course, peace, maybe, in order for make it easier for Frank, who everybody thought that suffered from shyness, for him to have better relations in between the family. The mother will be the mouthpiece for Frank, and she will come and communicate unto others what Frank wanted. And so even if your child is only having difficulty because he is shy socially, the effort should be put for that child to communicate for himself, by himself. Even if the situation is difficult, that child has to learn how to confront his or her own situations. And so that's what I had for today. Tomorrow I will be speaking a little bit more, explaining in regards to the importance of our nutrition, because having malnutrition in our bodies will make the situation worse for us. So I will be explaining that tomorrow, and I will be also explaining a little bit more in regards to the what happens to those in their mind when they have autism, but also how our nervous system has to do with how we are going to function inside of our brains, how our neurons, what different neurons we have inside of our body, the type of nutrition, or how nutrition affects our neurons, our brain function. And so also I will be explaining a little bit more in regards to the outer body experiences that you may be having as an adult with autism, explaining a little bit more why this happened and how you can take control of your thoughts, because it is important. that we learn how to take control of our thoughts, how to develop a conscious status. And that will be for tomorrow, Sunday. All right, so I will be doing that tomorrow, and I thank you for joining me today. My name is Judith Mendoza. I am a behavior consultant and educator, and also bringing autism awareness, education, understanding, and mentoring. Okay, so I hope you continue to have a beautiful day today. Goodbye.